Module 17, the damsel in distress signal. With this signal, you can tap into a man's natural protective instincts. It switches him into serve and protect mode. How can you boost your romantic appeal by making use of his need to impress? The answer is simple. Let him help you. Let him be a provider. Recognize his strengths and abilities in real time by allowing him to come to your rescue in the tiniest ways. And no, this does not mean you have to give up your confident, capable, and empowered way of living as a woman. In fact, it's the exact opposite. The more confident and capable you are, the better this method works. And that's because contrast is greater. It only takes a tiny gesture from a confident woman to trigger his hero instinct, whereas a woman who has a dependent personality style has to work harder to make this method work. Don't make him choose between you and the adventure he craves. Have you ever wondered why all the fictional novels and movies geared toward men involve a hero on a journey toward increasing power and accomplishment? The male hero faces all kinds of trials and becomes more powerful, gathering tools and knowledge that ultimately allow him to succeed. Men crave adventure and power. That driving force exists within every man. It's been documented by numerous sociology and psychology studies that toddler boys show a preference for tools, for example, toy trucks or a stick, even before socialization reinforces that instinct. Meanwhile, girls are driven more toward attachment, connection, and toys that reflect that basic drive, like dolls and games that are geared toward sharing rather than competition. If you pit yourself against his basic drive for adventure, you will be in a never-ending battle. Instead, why not get the best of both worlds? Become a part of his mission for success, and he will appreciate his relationship with you more than you could ever imagine. There's a reason why modern movies and ancient fables return again and again to a plot that involves some kind of damsel in distress. And it comes back to that same trigger we've talked about so many times: fascination. Does Superman fall in love with a supermodel? No, of course not. That would make for a boring movie. He falls for Lois Lane, who is constantly getting herself into trouble with her fearless pursuit of the latest news story. Does Popeye relax at home with his cans of spinach? No. If he did, you never would have heard of him. Popeye is always coming to the rescue of his girlfriend Olive Oyl. Why? Because that fascinates little boys and men alike. They tune in to see more of that awesome goodness. In the Middle Ages, it was stories like Rapunzel in a tower, waiting for her rescuer to climb her long locks of hair. Other stories from the Middle Ages include Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, and of course we know about them because Disney dug up these stories, recognizing their iconic appeal. Before that, it was evident in stories featured in Greek mythology, like Perseus fighting a beast to save Andromeda, or Sita in the ancient Indian epic Ramayana. The point is, entertainment follows human interest, not the other way around. Humans have long been fascinated with this particular type of interaction. The interaction between a woman in danger and a man who falls in love with her after fighting to protect her. But the actual signal need not be so dramatic. It works just fine in simpler form. So let's examine the simple formula you can start using today. What is the signal? 3 grown men, all brothers, are engaged in a deep conversation along with their father. They sit comfortably in the living room while their wives and girlfriends socialize in the next room over. The 4 men look up as the youngest brother's girlfriend steps into the room and says, "Steve, can I borrow your muscles for a second? I can't get this jar open." After opening the jar, Steve returns to his seat to rejoin the conversation that paused only momentarily as all the men observed the interaction between Steve and his girlfriend. Take a guess. Whose social status just went up among these 4 men? That's right, Steve's. They all have a new appreciation for Steve's highly desirable relationship dynamic with his girlfriend. It's an unspoken quality they sensed in this simple interaction. You see, when a woman confidently singles out a man to accomplish a task, it gives him a jolt of positive self-esteem. And it influences more than his relationship with you. It influences his relationship with other men. The other 3 men judge his relationship as a healthy one. Why? Because these kinds of interactions are uncommon among couples whose relationships are strained. This may sound strange, but when a woman seems glad to be the damsel in distress, it signals the hero instinct on a biological level. It makes him feel a stronger bond with the woman who provided an opportunity for him to step into that role. Want some example phrases? "Jerry, I hate spiders, and there's one hiding behind my desk. Would you be my hero and defend my territory from this invasion?" "Jerry, I think I might have a slow leak in my back tire. Would you take a look and give me your expert opinion?" "Jerry, there's a creepy guy that has been hanging out in the lobby of my apartment building. Would you mind walking me up to my apartment?" "Jerry, my friend is dating a guy who seems all right, but we thought it'd be good to get a guy's perspective. If you joined us for drinks after work on Friday, do you think you could tell us your impression of whether he's a stand-up sort of guy?" This last example is a little different, isn't it? With this one, the real power comes from social affirmation. You have essentially recommended him to your friends based on his sound judgment of good character. There's a deep compliment embedded in this request for help, even though it is help requested on behalf of someone else. Contrast the examples above with examples that will not work. Jerry, my daughter is doing one of those dumb fundraisers. Do you mind asking your friends at work if they'll buy some boxes of cookies? This one lacks the damsel in distress quality. Plus, it requests something annoying that does not imply any kind of expertise, skill, manliness, or other quality you need for the job. Jerry, I need to buy a new camera lens. Do you mind researching it on the internet for me? The problem here is that you have not identified something that is impinging on your sense of well-being or safety, and then you've assigned him a task he doesn't get to perform in front of you or while interacting with you. So it doesn't trigger his hero instinct, unless he has a reason to believe that you see him as an expert on camera lenses. Jerry, I have a pounding headache, and I left my Advil in my car in the parking lot. Would you mind fetching it for me? Here, you do have something impinging on your sense of well-being, so what's the problem with this one? The problem is that the nature of the task does not reflect a belief in his power, strength, or heroic qualities. Rather, you're treating him like an errand boy. Again, it may still have some positive effect that you chose him, but the effect will be very weak, and it could even backfire. If you found yourself with a headache and you really wanted him to get your medicine, there's a better approach. You should just tell him your head is hurting. Then, as if it's a separate thought, mention that you have medicine in your car, but you don't feel like getting it. He just might volunteer to get it for you. That changes things, because he's the one coming up with a solution and then executing the plan. Your next step is to express gratitude and call him your hero. If you call him your hero in front of others in the office, don't be showy about it. Instead, move a little closer, look deeply into his eyes, and almost whisper it. You're my hero. Thank you. It feels like a private exchange, and this enhances the power of your expressed appreciation. How does it work? You reveal a need and let him come up with a solution. It doesn't matter how simple or complex the request. The formula works as long as all the right components are in place. So here's a review of the components. Number 1, a need is presented, something that affects you in some way. Number 2, your request for help demonstrates trust in some quality he would be proud to demonstrate, preferably a quality that makes him feel manly, qualities like bravery, strength, knowledge, experience. Number 3, you don't prescribe the exact method or steps for him to use. You leave it up to him, even if you see a better way than the solution he comes up with. Real-life example story. Darren and Vicky were already married when they came to see me, but Vicky was planning her exit. She still loved Darren, but the pain was too much. They were older than most couples I've worked with, having raised 4 daughters, one of whom died just after reaching adulthood. Together they have invested in their children, their careers, and their home. But they were living like roommates, or at least that's how Vicky described it. She felt lonely and more than a little depressed. She said Darren had always been a good provider, a stable presence in her life, but he barely responded to her attempts to spark conversation. He spent 10 days of his limited vacation time on a hunting trip with 2 buddies every single year, and he seemed unable to say no to one of these friends named Jeff. At a moment's notice, Darren would drop everything to go hang out with Jeff. When I suggested she plan a getaway with him, she said, "What's the point? He would drive in total silence and I would be left alone with my thoughts." Vicky was approaching her retirement years, in a marriage that felt empty. Oddly enough, it was Darren who suggested getting help. Vicky told him she would love to save the marriage, but she didn't see any point in trying. She had no hope for changing him after so many years of trying to do just that. But I don't give up easily, and I had a few tricks up my sleeve. I met with each of them alone. You would have liked them both, intelligent, charming, kind, loving people. Darren admitted to his shortcomings as a partner, but he just didn't feel the passion Vicky seemed to want from him. He was comfortable in the marriage and didn't want to shake things up at this late stage in his life. After several sessions, I sat alone with Vicky discussing whether or not she was seeing progress. She was upset that day. She told me about the night before, quiet tears rolling down her cheeks. She described her decision to make a go of things, to throw her heart into the relationship again, to believe in a fresh start. With her flexible work schedule, she quit work a bit early. She spent that time making a special meal that took quite a bit of time and effort. She laid out everything in anticipation of her husband's return. She heard a car door slam and went to the window. Darren was home, but he paused as his friend Jeff slowly pulled up and leaned out the window of his truck to talk with Darren. Vicky was patient for about 10 minutes, but she didn't want the meal to go cold. So she stepped out the screen door and called to Darren, asking him to join her for a special meal that was ready and served. She paced around the house for the next 30 minutes, occasionally glancing out the window where Darren was still engrossed in conversation with Jeff. You can probably imagine what happened next. By the time Darren came inside, Vicky was in no mood to enjoy a special dinner with him. She let him eat alone while she cried in the bedroom. And what's worse, she told me, is that he acted like he had done nothing wrong when I confronted him about this. He said it would be rude to abruptly end a conversation with his friend, and he's just not that kind of person. But why does he seem to care more about what Jeff thinks of him than what I think of him? In that moment, I saw a damsel in distress. I knew what I needed to do next. So I asked her to sit in the waiting room while I called her husband back to talk. "You're having an affair," I told him. He looked a bit shocked, then a bit angry and confused. He said, "I've made a lot of mistakes in my marriage, James, but I can assure you that this is not one of them." I said, but in the world of relationships, reality doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is how you make her feel. And you've made her feel like you're having an affair." "With whom?" he demanded. "With Jeff," I replied. He froze, and in that moment he held my gaze for what seemed to be an eternity of stunned silence as he realized what I was saying. Then I played my ace, the card I always have up my sleeve, the one move I can always count on. "Darren," I said, "there's a woman out there in the waiting room right now, someone who has always wanted one thing more than anything else. She's always wanted a true companion, someone to share her thoughts with, someone who chooses her above all others, but she's lonely and sad." I said, "She's standing at a crossroads, but looking back at the home she loves. She's thinking of leaving behind everything she has invested her life in. She looks at the man she longed to form a life with, but there's someone standing in her way, someone who has replaced her, a person you talk with for hours, share your vacations with, a person you make a priority in your life, and she feels he has won." Darren stands 6 feet 4 inches tall. He speaks with a voice that sounds like rolling thunder. He sat in my office. He wept. I received an email from the couple 2 months later, and again 16 months later. The first email was from Vicky. She said, "You saved our marriage. I just want you to know that." The second email was from Darren. He pinpointed the moment I accused him of having an affair. He didn't remember much else we had talked about, because that one pivotal moment changed everything for him. I'll paraphrase what he said. "When you explained it that way, everything changed for me. I finally understood what I needed to do. I completely cut off my relationship with Jeff because it was a threat to our marriage. And I'm not great at it yet, but I'm learning how to open up my thoughts and share my emotional world with Vicky. I don't know why I needed you to explain it that way to realize what I was throwing away, but I'm thankful every day." What really changed? Darren suddenly saw his partner as the damsel in distress. Instead of a nagging wife who criticized his failure as a husband, there was an emotional shift. His emotions shifted as his hero instinct was activated. He saw a new identity open up before him, a version of himself he had always secretly wanted to be. It was like an invitation to become a better version of himself. He took the invitation. One more thing. The ultimate formula. In part 1 of this course, I described a concept called the momentum method. There, I challenged you to adopt a new perspective with a commitment to seeing your relationship as a never-ending partnership in pursuing a goal. Do you remember what the goal was? It was the goal of enhancing each other's happiness. The more significant you become in his life, the more your happiness matters to him. The more opportunities you give him to actively work toward your happiness and his own, the more satisfied he feels that he has achieved something meaningful, a drive of the hero instinct. And the more he sinks his teeth into the goals you establish together as a part of the momentum method, the more significant you become to him. It's like a rolling snowball that picks up speed and power the longer the combination is in effect. This knowledge is the reward for your persistence in sticking with me through this course. Use these concepts, and you will see the unfurling beauty of a relationship forged in the steel of his masculine drives and bathed in the delicate sunshine of your feminine appeal. Together you will share a level of happiness few people have ever known, and it is to that dream, that hope, that soon-to-be reality that I will leave you now with my most sincere thanks for making me a part of your journey. Your friend and relationship coach, James Bauer. P.S. I've included some bonus training material for you. It's in the addendum below. It's about using a slightly different but related feature of the fascination trigger, curiosity. If you're interested, I'll show you how to use it in combination with text messages to rev up your relationship momentum.